Hi, everyone. It's Kelly from The Hub here today with our friend Brittany from El Hub, who is not talking about anything about landlord-tenant today again. How are you there, my friend?
Hi, Kelly. Doing well. How about you?
Good. I just realized that this shirt makes me look a little bit like a pastor. When my hair's like this looks like my collar, doesn't it?
Little bit, little
It just
bit.
it just does. I just realized that. It's just sort of like a funky tie-dye there. Now it doesn't look like that at all. So I don't know. I was just having a little moment. So Brittany and I are chatting about her 5.5, I just say 6, her 6-month Appalachian Trail hike. Last week we talked about what motivated her and her husband to do it. And this week we're going to talk about getting prepared for it. Um, so last week, Brittany sort of confessed that she just decided that they were going to do it, and then they did it. And I don't think that's super true. I mean, she said that they did do some research, and I think that there's a little more to it. So we're going to dig a little deeper into that. So first of all, I got to talk about the physical part, just because. So this is an Appalachian Trail. It's not like paved. So
Most of it isn't. There are a
yeah.
couple stretches that you road walk, but for the most part, yeah, a little rougher terrain.
So, and it's the Appalachian Trail. So it's, in the mountains. And for those people who are getting all hoity-toity for this moment, it's not the Rockies. I get that. But it's still mountains.
Hmm.
So it's up and down. And as far as I'm concerned, a little Billy Goatish, right? I mean, you're doing this for a while and, scrambling on rocks and stuff. And there's not like, I mean, there's a path, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There is a path.
Okay. Because, I mean, and so, so not everybody's in the same place with like with what they've done outside. So like sometimes when you go to like a park, there's like a trail, and then there might be like a little yellow square that's like on trees, and like that's how you know where to go. You follow the little yellow paint
Hmm.
squares that are on the trees, and you can't necessarily see anything on the ground. Is it like that, or you can really see a path?
It really depends on the terrain. Like you said, you're going up and over mountains, you're going down paths, sometimes you're on roads, sometimes you're in meadows. So sometimes it's super easy to tell exactly where the trail goes. You can just see, here's where all the footsteps are. Other times you're on really rocky ground where like it's a little less clear, or maybe you're in a section of pine forest where there's not a lot of undergrowth. So it all kind of looks a little bit the same. So that's where those blazes come into handy. So that's what those paint markings on the trees or the rocks are. They're
Oh,
called
a
blazes.
blaze.
So they're
Oh,
typically, at least on the Appalachian Trail, they're typically 2 inches wide by 6 inches tall. So it'll
oh.
like a little vertical stripe down the tree. And for the Appalachian Trail, those are white. So basically
Oh.
everywhere on the Appalachian Trail, you'll see white blazing that'll go through. And then if you go off onto a side trail, that'll usually be blue.
Oh, oh, like a little forks everywhere.
Yeah, so say there are these shelters on the trail that you can go stay for the night, just a little roof, a porta potty, not a porta potty, an outhouse that's
Oh,
they're set up every 10 miles or so, some closer together, some further apart in various conditions, some built back in the 60s, some built last year. So yeah,
wait, the
you can
1960s or the 1860s?
1960s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was like, or the 1760s. Okay, the 1960s. But
Yeah, but you
still,
can still get a pretty sizable rodent infestation in that time. Let me tell a quick story.
okay.
So
Okay, I'm super grossed out already, but I'm excited about the story. Okay.
Okay, so this was early on, probably in our first month hiking. Might have been down in Georgia, North Carolina, somewhere around there. We were hiking and stopped off for the night, and we're like, okay, well, there's no one in the shelter. We'll go ahead and lay down in there, and it was all fine. Nice evening. We did a little campfire. Some other through hikers that were coming down south that were almost the end of their journey came in and camped there too, but they set up their tent. But we're like, nope, we'll just lay out our sleeping bags out. It's basically like a 3-walled shelter with a platform on the bottom and then a roof overhead, tin roof.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, great. So we hung up our food, of course, because you want to make sure that you don't have any food with you or anything that smells. So no toothpaste, no chapstick, all of that has to get strung up in a tree. So that way the bears can't get to it.
Toothpaste too?
Yep.
I never thought
Suntan
about that.
lotion, anything you've got that has any kind of a scent to it, you want to have that way out of reach and out on a branch so that way a bear can't get to it.
Oh, okay.
So we lay down. It's a nice evening. Fall asleep. It's dark out and I wake up and I'm like, oh, it's raining. I didn't think it was supposed to rain tonight. Go back to sleep. I wake up again. I'm like, it's not raining. That was the mice crawling on the tin roof. Just steady pitter patter. Let me tell you how quickly we got out, got our headlamps on, and set up the tent.
So I can tolerate a lot of things. I can tolerate snakes. I can tolerate, not really, spiders. Mice are, I'm a super non-tolerator of rodents.
Okay. Can I give you an even more fun story?
Yeah, I like listening to other people's experiences with rodents, but not my own. So yeah, fire away.
Okay. So another night, maybe halfway down the trail, we were camping and we have a smaller tent, but it's got a bigger rain fly. So we sleep in the mesh section and then we put our packs underneath the rain fly so that way it'll be protected from any rain, but it's not in the tent. So I wake up in the morning, go to drink from my water pouch. They're called platypuses. It's just a plasticky pouch that, it's not a hard-sided water bottle because, that to have a metal or a plastic water bottle, it would weigh more. So most people either use disposable bottles or they'll have these water pouches with a little tube and then a little nozzle that you drink from.
Yeah, like long distance bike riders wear those.
Yep, yeah. Absolutely. So I take a drink from mine. Like, this feels kind of weird. What is this? Don't really think much about it. Lay back down for a minute. Look back over a little bit later. Here, a mouse or a rat or some other fun creature came by in the night and nibbled off the end. Let me tell you how thoroughly I brushed my teeth that morning.
I was going to say, there might not be enough mouthwash in that it was portable enough for me to, I don't know. Can you put like a match in your mouth to go? Wow.
I was not pleased.
I could understand why.
Yeah, so that's a fun wildlife. Anyway, what were we talking about?
I mean, but this is all part of it, right? I mean, this is all like so how do you get physically ready for 6 months? I don't even know how you can. I mean, yes. I mean, so I know you from the waist down. Other people might not. You are trim and fit. But that doesn't mean that you are physically ready for a 6-month hike. I mean, yeah, last time you talked about like the record that to do Maine to Georgia is whatever, 11 minutes or, you know, whatever. It's like a really quick thing because you do it like nonstop and you're running the whole time. But that you guys chose to have a more leisurely thing. But still, that does mean you still have to walk the whole thing. I mean, you have to be fit enough to be able to do that. So like, what did you do to, so that you could master it? Because you still have to billy goat those rocks and up and down and all that stuff.
To be honest, I think the biggest training was not physical at all because I did very little physical training. I mean, my husband and I like to get out and do a casual hike, a couple of miles, you know, on a Sunday afternoon. But to be honest, I was working full time and doing grad school, and so was he. So that left very little time for going out doing week-long hikes to get myself in shape. So I was not particularly in shape when I started. So it was really about setting reasonable expectations for what those first couple of weeks were going to look like. So I didn't start out the trail thinking, oh, well, I'll do 20 miles the first day and 22 miles the second day. And, you know, we'll just get to it and it'll be great. No, I started out thinking, okay, let's see what an 8-mile day looks like. What does a 10-mile day look like? Really taking our time, listening to what our bodies needed, letting ourselves get adapted to the pace that we were able to do, and being comfortable with the pace that we could do. There were a lot of people that hiked a lot faster than us, and that was fine. But often we would find that we would see someone a couple hundred miles down the trail later saying, oh yeah, well, I had to get off for a couple of weeks because I had an injury. So now I'm back on. So even though we hiked slower, in the end, we ended up taking the same amount of time.
Slow and steady wins the race, huh? Even though you weren't even racing at all. It had nothing to do with that.
Exactly. But a good thing to do to prepare would be to wear in a pair or two of boots. You know, everyone's probably gotten a new pair of shoes and they didn't fit too great the first time.
Yeah.
You know, you really have to wear them in. I would absolutely recommend that someone do that for their hiking boots. Since, you know, and get a good quality pair too. That's something I wouldn't skimp on because I've got super wimpy feet. So I had to find the right kind that would work for me. And then I wore them around. I had a walking commute, so to work a mile to work and back each day, back when I was living in Philly. So I would wear them to work and get comfortable. And I wore in 2 pairs because I knew that one pair isn't going to last me all 2,200 miles. I ended up using 3 pairs altogether. My husband used 2. Some people use more, some people use less. But that third pair, it was the challenge to wear them in completely from scratch up in New Hampshire, which is one of the more challenging states on the trail.
Oh, so you had to buy a pair while you were on the hike and wear them in when you needed them rather than when you wanted them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah, I knew they wouldn't last me the last couple hundred miles of the trail. So I figured it's worth the investment to get some new boots and to go through a couple weeks of some foot pain and to do that. So that way I knew that I had the traction and the support that I needed to finish out the hike.
Oh, and you know what? I'm glad that you said that. And is that why people start southern and go northern? Because you're starting out easier and working your way harder so that by the time you get to the end, it's the hardest part? Or do you do it because of the weather?
Some of it's weather, some of it's tradition, some of it's the views. So, I mean, not everyone will agree with me. Everyone's got different perspectives on what their favorite states are, but I absolutely love seeing New England. The hiking was more challenging, I found, but the views were spectacular. Hiking in the Green Mountains and the Whites, and then up in Maine, it was just gorgeous. It was also beautiful down south too, but you can't really start up in Maine until the park up there opens. So Baxter State Park needs to open up. I think it's sometime in mid-June that they open up. So if you want to get an earlier start, you need to start somewhere else on the trail. So most folks end up starting late February, early March. We needed to wait until the end of April to finish out our graduate degrees before we could get started. So we actually hit the trail pretty late. But we decided to just try starting out at the southern end, go straight through. If we found that we were taking extra time, we always could have flip-flopped. So hike up a certain amount and then get the top, which closes on October 15th because of weather. There's only a short season that you can hike up there. And then we could have always hiked down to catch the rest of the trail if we missed any.
And so did you end on like October 15th in Maine?
We ended, it was either October 10th or 11th, I think on the 10th. So we were cutting it close.
Because for those of you who don't know, I actually lived in New Hampshire for 5 years. And so that part of the country I'm very familiar with. And if you don't know New England, if you live in New Hampshire, you essentially live in Maine and Vermont and Connecticut and Rhode Island and Massachusetts at the same time. You just do, because you can be in all those states within about 45 minutes, depending on where you live. So you essentially live in all those states. And that's sort of fascinating. Yeah. Fall comes early if you're there, and especially at like higher elevations, fall comes quite early. Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. Huh. Huh. Oh, yeah, you especially be like sleeping outside. Like you can't do that. Absolutely that you can't do it after October 15th. You become a popsicle.
So if you've got the right gear, you can hike anywhere at any time. But you, of
Well,
course, want to
yeah.
make sure that you're paying attention to the local park ordinances and regulations and all of that.
Yeah.
You want to be respectful of it.
Yeah.
A lot of hikers are free spirits and want to do what they want, and that's fantastic. And I totally support doing that.
Yeah.
Because it's an incredibly liberating experience to, not have all of the day-to-day encumbrances that most of us have in our day-to-day life and work.
Huh.
However, there are a fair amount of hikers that don't consider how their actions impact others to the extent that I would.
Like what?
So they bend the rules. They aren't as respectful to the local towns, the local parks they go through. Maybe don't walk quite as lightly as I would recommend. They don't necessarily leave no trace to the extent that I would advocate for.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
That can really leave a bad impression for some of the trail towns and the folks that live nearby if they see these hikers that are partying, leaving trash, thinking that rules don't apply to them. It can really damage some of those relationships. So I do really encourage folks to, have the hike they want, take the time and the space to be free spirits, but also be respectful and responsible to everyone that lives nearby, whether that's animals, whether that's people, locals, other visitors from around the country. This trail is for all of us, and we all need to be respectful of it.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's something that we tend to forget when we're talking about those kinds of things. We get caught up in, do you have the right equipment? Do you have the right, food? Do you have the right, lots of other kinds of stuff? And we forget that it's easy to forget to be respectful and that kind of stuff. Living in New Hampshire, every spring, there would be hikers who would take what was considered to be by locals to be unnecessary risks on some of the mountains. And I learned this from people who had lived there their whole lives, that it was spring, so that, and this is what they told me, I'm just repeating their words, I am no expert, that when in the spring when there was thaw, that the ice would, so if this is like the mountainside, the ice would separate from the side of the mountain, and hikers would be hiking, and they would, if they were skiing or snowshoeing or whatever, that the ice would separate, and that they would try to shoot the gap between the mountainside and the snow, and that they would fall into the crevice and die. And it would happen pretty much every year. And it was very unusual for there not to be a death. And whether they, and it was also, they were generally not local New Hampshire people. They were people from out of state, generally out of New England, lots of times out of the country. And it was always sort of discussed that they didn't respect sort of the rules and like the norms of how that was done. And I was always like, huh, how do they know what those norms are? How do they sort of know what those rules are? Are they doing it because they're just being jerks? Are they doing it because they don't know? And I don't know the answer to that. I don't know, like, how should they have known that? I mean,
Yeah. I mean, most folks
I
will
don't
carry
know.
a guidebook, at
True.
least if you're through hiking. So that'll give you a lot of really helpful information,
Yeah.
especially there are sections of the trail that do have more regulations for safety.
Yeah.
So like the Great Smokies, you want to be much more careful because it's got a lot of traffic, and it's you just want to make sure that you're being safe in terms of bears, with the Shenandoahs as well, the national parks. When you get up to the Whites, that can be a much more challenging area. Anytime you're up above tree line, you want to make sure that you're not camping above there, because if there's a storm that hits, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
So you want to be aware of your surroundings. You want to understand the risks that you're taking. So pay attention to the areas that you're passing through, understand what the local rules and regulations are, the recommendations. If an area is closed, it's closed. You shouldn't attempt to hike through. Out in the West Coast, on the Pacific Crest Trail, there's a lot of areas that have had extensive wildfires. So that's something that they would want to pay very close attention to, where they should be hiking, where they shouldn't be hiking, if you need to detour, because when you put yourself at risk, you're potentially putting first responders at risk as well.
Right. And that was always, the other part of it is that, so if you've fallen in one of those crevices, then how does someone get you? That, I mean, yes, mountain rescue is trained for that, but in the spring, melting and thawing and refreezing can be really complicated. Yes, they're trained for that too, but that's super dangerous. And I mean, so you bring up that whole, you need to do research. Just going out there willy-nilly without a guidebook or several guidebooks, without reading, without paying attention, without doing all that kind of stuff is just irresponsible.
And there's a difference between just wanting to go out for a weekend,
right.
and
or a day hike
in the summer,
right. Yeah.
As long as you've got water, you're probably okay.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're out in late fall in northern New England, there are probably some more safety considerations that you want to put into place, making sure that you understand your risks and are carrying the gear that you need to mitigate them.
Yeah. I mean, and even, how many people have we all seen on the news who go hike, even do a day hike in the Grand Canyon and don't bring water?
Mm-hmm.
Or go for a day hike somewhere where and wear flip-flops.
Mm-hmm.
Like, your mom will yell at you, like, come on now, what are you doing? So right, even just those kinds of easy things that, like, this isn't, you got to be thoughtful about, and I think that's, hiking has become accessible to a lot of kinds of people. It doesn't mean that anybody should just go and do it. I want everybody to go do it, but you gotta be thoughtful about what you're doing out there.
Yeah,
And
know what you're capable of,
yeah,
know what's within your wheelhouse. You can find trails that, are ADA accessible that you can do in a wheelchair, and that's fantastic.
which
I
is so cool.
totally
Yeah,
support that.
yeah.
There are a lot of trails that I probably won't take on because I don't do rock climbing. That's not something that I know how to do, and that's not in my wheelhouse. So I wouldn't do that without, boring or wrenching the appropriate equipment
Yeah.
and taking someone that could guide me in that. But that's not something I would go out and do on my own.
Yep. I learned that the hard way. I got my my first mother-in-law, loved hiking, and she was much more adventurous than I was. And she said, let's go. I found this great little trail. And I said, fantastic. And I got a White Mountain research book, like a guidebook, which was thick. It was a huge book. And she told me the name of the trail, and I got it, and it said, it was a moderate trail. And I'm like, I could do moderate. And I read about it. Oh my God. No, I cannot do moderate. It was boulders that were, if I stood up in front of the boulder came up to here, up to my chest, and I'm 5'8". And I was like, this is a whole other kind of level of billy goating. I can't do this. Like, I didn't even know where to put my leg to get up on the rock. I was like, this, no. So I looked at my mother-in-law, and I was like, how about this? How about you do it, and I will stay down here, and I will learn some things about the bottom of this mountain, and you climb to the top, and I will cheer for you all the way down. And I'll be super excited to hear all of your stories. And she was like, she gave me a ration full. And I was like, no. I'm going to be supportive of you, because I knew my limits, because I was like, I can't. I don't need to break anything on my body. And I'm just not that kind of person. I didn't need to prove to her anything about my level of estrogen. And nope.
Yep.
And that's just where I was with that. And I also learned what moderate meant in that book.
Yeah, that it can have a different meaning from guidebook to guidebook.
Yeah, moderate meant no for me. I needed, like, the bunny trail. And so, and I also learned that what physical preparation I needed to do for that book. And you're right, because you sort of alluded to this before. I also learned what mental preparation I needed to learn on this, because you said that this is a mental game much more than this is a physical game.
So I am someone that likes a little bit of structure around things. It helps me kind of break it down. My husband is the visionary, like, oh, let's go do this. And I'm like, okay, but how? How do we do this? How do we take 2,200 miles and make it something that makes sense on a day-to-day basis? So because we did this in 2016, when there were a lot of people that have done this already, there's a lot of great stuff on the internet. There's lots of great books that you can read, different stories of people that are doing it. I found this graph, basically a spreadsheet of breaking it down, whether you wanted to do 12-mile days, 15-mile days, or 18-mile days on average. And I found that, like, looking at when we could start and going up until the October 15th, if I took a 15-mile day average, that would give us 3 to 4 weeks to spare. Now, that doesn't count in any kind of 0 days or rest days.
Yeah.
And they kind of broke it down by difficulty too. So some of the days were only 8 miles. Others, they suggest you do 18 miles. But looking at what the degree of difficulty on the trail, just to give a kind of overall view. So I found that really helpful to be like, okay, so this is what it's going to look like. My first week, I need to get to the end of here. So having that bite-sized pieces mentality was really helpful to me
Yeah.
in getting mentally strong for the trail, to think about what it meant in very small pieces. So that way I can be like, okay, well, what we need to do is go 2 more miles, and then we can sit and have a snack, rest for an hour, and then we'll keep going.
So I'm more like your husband, and I would need you to go with me to coach me. Because like I would be like, yay, we're going on the trip. This is fantastic. Woody, woody, woo, woohoo. And then like 4 hours into it, I'll be like, yeah, I'm done. Yeah, I'm done. I've lost interest and I don't really care. I love the vistas. I love the views. Can we just drive to the next part? And then
Mm-hmm.
I would need you to be like, no, we're going to go 2 more miles. And I would be like, I don't care about 2 more miles. And then I would need you. So, you know what I mean? Like, it's about your own little personality to get through it. And then I would need you to say, no, put your head down and we're going to count 2,000 steps or whatever it is. Like, I would need a personal coach to get me through it. I don't know if I have the fortitude to do it, but I will tell you this. So, when I was a teacher, I graded AP US history essays, and I graded them for nine days straight, 8 hours a day, and I counted, because you want to keep track of how many essays you grade, because then you compare it to other people because you want to be a cool kid. And I've graded over 2,000 essays at a sit, and
Mm-hmm.
I find that to be, I've like talked about it with long distance marathon runners. I have a friend who runs like, it's not even marathons. He runs like he wants to run across the Sahara Desert. He's that kind of a runner. Like, whoa, like I don't even, he's like a 1 in 10 million kind of a runner. And he said that his running is not physical, his running is mental. And I think that grading essays is like that too. Like, that's not physical at all. It's a total mental game. You just get through it, man. You just talk yourself through it and you just get through it. And so I think because I did that, maybe I could actually walk the Appalachian Trail,
I
because you
think
just talk
anyone,
yourself through it.
almost anyone, can hike the Appalachian Trail.
Huh.
Given the time, like take all of the time and measures that your body needs,
Yeah.
do it your own way. But I think it's something that absolutely anyone can do. And you're right, it's like 90% mental. And there were days when I was done. I just didn't want
Really?
to do it
Like,
anymore.
even you?
I wanted to have a shower. I wanted to have blue jeans again. I wanted to eat vegetables. Like, it was just like, it was too much same every single day.
Yeah.
And there were days when it was hard. It was so hard.
I
But
can imagine.
having a really supportive partner was like really key to finishing as well, because you're like, well, this is our shot, you know? When we're done with this, we're getting jobs, and we're not going to have this time to do it in the same way. So are we going to keep going? Are we going to give it our shot, or are we going to be done?
So
And
Christian cheered you on too.
oh yeah, we both took turns doing that. I probably did a little bit more of the like detailed preparation, but we both had to be mentally tough. We both approached it in different ways because we both processed information different ways, because we're different people. But I think that made us stronger for it. And I think another big thing that made us successful is we actually went to counseling beforehand. We met with a therapist throughout the year prior, you know, because I strongly believe therapy is a really good preventative thing, you know?
Oh, that's
It's not
so
something that you should
cool.
just do when, you know, you're on your last nerve and this is it. Like, it helped us strengthen our relationship. It helped us communicate around really tough issues. It helped us understand where we're coming from, and to talk about what our expectations and our fears were. And that made a difference for when we were out there in the middle of the wilderness without anyone else but the bugs and the mice to talk to.
You're in
Because
the middle of
it's important to
Virginia
have those tools.
walking around and you're like, do you remember what the therapist said? She said you needed to be more communicative. And he's like, I know, I'm being more communicative. That is so cool that you went to preventative therapy. Oh, Brittany, that is amazing.
Yeah, I think it's something that doesn't get talked about enough. Like everyone's like, "Ooh, you went to therapy? Oh
Right, because
no, like
you're
the divorce
absolutely
is
right.
around the corner."
Right. Everybody goes when they're like, it's the last thing. It's like the divorce papers are in people's hands and they're like, well, we're going to therapy, or and then you got the papers in your hand. Oh my, that's so cool. I know.
Yeah, so I think that was so key to us like being successful and actually sticking with it, because it helped us be honest with ourselves and each other. And we were still humans and we were still jerks to each other every now and again, but you know, it happens.
Right, because he said, well, do you have the compass? And then you said, I told you it was in the front pack. It was in the front pocket. And he said, I told you it was in the middle pocket. And then, right, you still had the where's the compass argument. And then he said, but the therapist told you to always, right. Because we all have a dumb argument about the dumbest thing, right? No matter if you go to therapy or not, right? But still, that's so wonderful that that's wonderful. Okay, we have talked way longer than we were supposed to, and we didn't even finish all the things that we were going to talk about. Okay, so next time we will continue the how do you prep for this whole thing, because we have to talk about equipment and we have to talk about how do you prep your friends and family, because some friends and family will be like, okay, I'll see you in 6 months, and some friends and family will be like, you can't leave us, there are holidays. So we will absolutely talk about that. And we have to talk about clothes, because I really have questions about that as well. So
Okay.
this has been so enlightening. I am beyond fascinated. Thank you as always, my friend, and we will chat again next week. See
All
you,
right. Thanks,
everybody.
Kelly. Bye.